Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and today we're going back in time. We're going historical today here on an episode of Movie Goodness, and we're going historical because there's something in the future that awaits us, and that is Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. And anticipation of this film, because I'm a Greek mythology nut, I'm reading that in school, and yes, reading. This is probably one of the only things I read in high school. I'm pretty sure we all learned about the Odyssey. That was like part of the curriculum in school, the Odyssey. And I don't know why, out of all the things that were taught in my 4 years of high school, that this sticks out to me. I don't remember anything else about high school. And nothing else that was taught to me stuck with me more than the Odyssey. Maybe because it took a whole semester to get through it. Maybe that was it, or it was just the allure of it all. Me being a big comic book fan, a big comic book nut who just loved everything comic books, superheroes and the stories behind it. It's very methodical, and to be in school and being taught about this Greek lore, it felt like a comic book story to me. And I just resonated with it more, and to the point where I actually read. I actually read the story. Well, as much as I could around that time, because the Odyssey is something. It's more of a mini series than it is just one book. Is a lot in the Odyssey, and I don't remember a lot. I've forgotten more than I remember. Uh, it's been so long. It's high school, but I do remember the core of everything and the characters and what significance they play in the story. And that's why when this movie was announced, I was excited. But oh my God, what hyped me up beyond hype was Christopher Nolan. I mean, Christopher Nolan is this generation's. Who can I compare him to? I don't want to say Spielberg, because Spielberg is still making movies, not to the level that he did back in the 70s and 80s and 90s as well. But he he hasn't been knocking it out of the park. Disclosure Day, which I felt was a real good film, but it wasn't a Spielberg film. You know, a Spielberg film is something of an event. You know, when you think back to Jurassic Park and the Indiana Jones movies and Jaws and, you know, things of that nature, they were events. Now he just makes good movies. And that's kind of a step down for him. It just feels like a step down that he's making basic movies. But I say all that to say that Spielberg is my favorite director. That's my childhood. He basically raised me. You know, the first movies I remember watching were E.T. and Close Encounters and all that, and Raiders of the Lost Ark and so on, and not to mention the movies he produced. But I'm going on a long tangent about Spielberg, but the point I'm trying to get at is Christopher Nolan. Just like Spielberg was a major part of my childhood and why I consider him one of my favorites, Nolan I consider one of my favorites because he's a big part of my adulthood. All his movies I deeply, deeply enjoy and love. One I don't. Just one. And it's not that I don't enjoy the movie because I've seen it multiple times. It just doesn't have the same Christopher Nolan flair, and that is Tenet. And there's a lot of intangibles that go into Tenet. Number one, didn't understand what that story was. Didn't understand. I couldn't follow that movie. That's probably why I watched it multiple times to try to get it. Now, granted, every time I watch it, I do notice something different. but nothing to really get it to the level where I'm like, man, yeah, this is one of his hidden genius movies. No, but the rest of his movies, my God, just a couple of years ago with Oppenheimer, where he finally won Best Director, and that wasn't even his best directed film in my humble opinion, but it was excellently made. Like all of his movies, the Dark Knight trilogy were great. Uh, my favorite film from his, Inception. Inception is so perfect in my mind of a film that is a science fiction action film, but it doesn't feel like a science fiction action film. At least that's not the core of that movie, the basis of that movie. It's deeper than that. It's such a good movie. Oh my God, it's such a good movie. And Interstellar and so on and so forth. He is a major part of my adulthood, and I love all of his movies. Whenever his name is attached to a film, count me in. I'm there. I'm there, no matter what it's about. And there was a lot of speculation going into what is his next move after Oppenheimer. What is the film that he's going to make to follow up his Oscar-winning directorial effort? And finally, it was announced that it's The Odyssey. And my mind just blew up because Christopher Nolan is the most grounded filmmaker you ever want to. Despite the fact he make these fantastical films like an Inception, where you're hijacking somebody's dreams and going in, and the reality is warped and buildings are folding up on top of each other and stuff. That's really a grounded movie. You know, Interstellar, we're going into space and going through black holes and going on planets where seconds counts as minutes or hours or years. I forgot the time frame, how it went there, but it was fantastical, yet grounded. You know, the Batman films he made, the Dark Knight trilogy, is a comic book character where you have characters such as Joker and Scarecrow and Bane and Ra's al Ghul and all these characters in this Batman trilogy, but it's grounded, realistic. The Dark Knight is the most realistic comic book movie I've ever seen. That's one comic book movie I can sit back and say, yeah, that can really happen. That's a real life thing, because we've all met some jokers. Hey, we've all met those crazy people who just want to see the world burn. You know, they have no motive. That is their motive, just to destroy, seek and destroy. And so him being so grounded, how would he make a film or adapt a material that has cyclops and sirens and gods and, you know, all of, going to hell or Hades and talking to the dead and all this other stuff? How is he going to make something as fantastical as the Odyssey? And that's the most compelling part about going to see this film. I can't wait. I honestly can't wait. And so over the past few months, I was kind of scratching my head as to, should I go back and try to, you know, get caught up on my Odyssey knowledge, you know, maybe find a YouTube video or two to kind of give a little backstory on the Odyssey, or just go to the movie and be refreshed that way. Well, I started watching a video. It is long as I don't know what, because they go through every aspect of the Odyssey. But I got about 10 minutes into it, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna wait for the movie. I'm not. I don't want to go into it judging it. You know, there are people already losing their minds because Helen of Troy is black in the movie. You know, portrayed by the great Lupita Nyong'o, and they're not speaking Greek, you know, and everybody's speaking in an English accent and stuff like that. People are losing their minds over that. come on, man. It's time to get off of that. I mean, really, why are people tripping over dumb stuff? It shouldn't have just be, in the case of Lupita Nyong'o playing Helen of Troy, shouldn't it be just the best actress for the role? It shouldn't have to come down, well, she's not white. She's not as beautiful. Number one, Lupita Nyong'o is beautiful. She may not be a beautiful to you, but she is a beautiful woman to many people who look at her. And so let that go. And the person you may have in mind for it may not be beautiful to me. You know, like, oh, they could have picked somebody better than that. You know, everybody's taste is different. It's all subjective, you know. So let it go. Just let it go. But there's already so much foolishness surrounding it. I didn't want to go into it and judging it off. Oh, that's not accurate. Icarus didn't do this, or no, that's not what was written. You know, and stuff. I want to see Christopher Nolan's version. And so, what I will do today, we're just going to get kind of a refresher for those of you who just want a refresher. Because just like me, it's been well over 30-something years since I learned this in high school. So I just want a little refresher. And in honor, since this is movie goodness and we do talk movies here, I'm going to review a film that is loosely, and I mean loosely, based on Homer's Odyssey. It is the 2000 film from the Coen Brothers, starring George Clooney. Oh, brother, where art thou? And now a lot of people, I know a lot of people don't even realize that that was an adaptation of the Odyssey, but it was. And loosely, loose as loose can get, but yet so close to it. You know, you can follow that and know that, okay, I know precisely what their interpretation is here, what they're interpreting from the Odyssey in this movie. And it is night and day. This is a pure comedy, but we're going to review that in honor of everything Odyssey. Yeah, they had other adaptations. They had a miniseries that came on television, I think in the 90s with Amon Asante, if I'm not mistaken. And I think a 1950s film based on it and all this. I think we watched that one in school. That was Kirk Douglas, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was Icarus. I could be wrong. Or Ulysses. I mean, not I keep saying Icarus, but Ulysses. But why review those just basic interpretations and go against the grain with old brother, where art thou? And so we'll do that at the end. But before we do that, let's go over the Odyssey. And I'm not going to go about the story and the plot and all this here. Really don't want to spoil anything. And in case you didn't read it in high school, maybe it was just down here. I don't know. But in the event that you don't want to be spoiled, you don't want to know anything about the Odyssey and blah, 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 you know, I'm not going to go into all of that, you know, save that for the film that comes out, or you can read the actual literature from Homer. But anywho's, the Odyssey, it is one of two major epics of ancient Greek literature that stands here, that they can actually date back. There are two of them, and they both were contributed by Homer. The other is Oilidid. I can never pronounce it, but basically that tells the story of Troy, that 10-year battle that includes the Trojan horse and all this other good stuff. And so that was like the prequel to the Odyssey, if you will, or the Odyssey is the sequel to that story. But those are the two oldest surviving works of literature known to man. The Odyssey was divided into 24 books. So it wasn't just one graphic novel of of the story of Ulysses trekked back home after the Trojan War. It was divided into 24 books. That's why it took an entire semester in high school to go through. And it follows Ulysses. He's the king, and this is his homecoming journey after the Trojan War, that 10-year long war. And that journey from Troy back home, he is tested. He goes through another, I don't know, mini trials, I should say, for another 10 years. So it was 20 years since he's been home. And during that time, he had to encounter a cyclops. He had to encounter the sirens. He had to encounter Greek gods like Athena and Poseidon, and there's so many, so much he had to go through in order to get back home. Meanwhile, you have his wife Penelope and their son. They're back at home, and after 20 years, they pretty much assumed he was dead. And you got a bunch of suitors who are in the home, all vying for Penelope's hand in marriage. And the whole kick there, the little thing there, she had to choose a suitor. But she finally believed that her husband was still alive and he's coming home. And so the deal was, she was sewing this I don't know, quilt or whatever, and when she finished sewing it, that's when she's going to pick one of the suitors. So she drugged this on for many years she sew during the day, and during the night when everybody's asleep, she undoes what she's done. So she'll never finish. And so that was the whole kick with that. Then you have the story of the son, and he's going on his own journey to try to find his father, even though he barely knows his father because he's been gone for 20 years. But this story by Homer, they really don't have a date on when it actually came to be. A lot of historians have different dates. Some believe it was the 8th century BC, 7th century BC, or mid 6th century BC when this was actually composed. But it came a part of Greek literature canon around that time. But there was also another change around that time. You notice I called him Ulysses, but it changed over time, with interpretations and everything. It changed from Odysseus to Odysseus. And so I believe they're calling him Odysseus in the Nolan film. So we'll rock with the Odysseus. But another note, in my little research, I found out that scholars, they're divided on whether any of the places the Odysseus visited was actually real. Some believe they were real. Some believe that some of these events were true. Yes, added with a little flair. But that this journey was actual truth. He probably didn't encounter, Cyclops and all that, but who knows? Who knows? We read the Bible, those of us who are believers, we believe that there's a lot of fantastical stuff that took place. And so, hey, who's to say that no fantastical stuff took place here? And quite honestly, if you are a Bible reader, you know that there were giants in the Bible. They were what they called them. Oh man, I'm getting myself in trouble here because I'm supposed to know this, but they're dragons. They're what do you call the ones with the angels? The angels had mated with humans. And yeah, they're giants, but they go by another name. I don't know why it's escaping me right now. But anyways, who's to say one wasn't a cyclops? Who said one didn't have an only one eye? So they may be, maybe, maybe. I'm of the belief that it's possible, and I consider myself a man of faith. I mean, after all, this took place centuries and we're talking 500-600 years before the birth of Jesus. And so anything could have happened. This is around new Old Testament territory where you had burning bushes and men with the power of the Hulk in their hair and all this other stuff. I mean, hey, who knows? Who knows? But anywho's, that's besides the point. But that's basically the gist of Odyssey and what significance it was back then, and it's amazing to see thousands of years later that it's still relevant. I mean, my God, just think about it. Have you recently went to a movie, watched a movie, left out of the theater, and forgot everything about that movie? You know, it's hard. It's hard to make something or write something. I even read a book. Have you ever read a book recently that just didn't appeal to you and you forgot everything about it and you was on to the next one? Just think of writing something so significant that close to what? I'm not even about to count. I don't think my math that high, but thousands of years later, and we're still intrigued by this piece of literature. And to the point where we had multiple adaptations of it on film, television, and on stage, you know, with operas and stage plays and things of that nature. It's just one of the greatest piece of literature in human history. And I can't wait to see what Christopher Nolan does with this property. But before we get Christopher Nolan's adaptation of the Odyssey, why don't we get the Coen Brothers interpretation of the Odyssey? Joel and Ethan Coen, who around the year 2000 and before that, we were getting, this is during the era of peak, and I mean peak Coen Brothers. Around this time, we're getting Fargo, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, The Big Lebowski. I mean, they were firing on all cylinders. And to be completely honest with you, their whole filmography is nothing but banger after banger after banger, going all the way back to 1984 with Blood Simple, and then giving us Raising Arizona with Nicolas Cage. Oh my God. I love that movie to this day. Barton Fink and Miller's Crossing, and then you get No Country for Old Men and True Grit, and they were just giving us, they were doing God's work. I'll just put it plainly like that. Unbelievable filmmakers. I think recently they've split up. They've gone their separate ways and making their own thing, and none of them are as interesting as they were when they were working together. It's something like the Safdie brothers, but it's worse with the Coens because they know each other. You know, they're brothers, of course, and they get each other, and they get each other and make it work. I think one of their bad films around this area, and I say bad loosely, is the Hudsucker Proxy, and I think that's a very misunderstood movie. Just like when The Big Lebowski came out, that was misunderstood. It was not a hit. Nobody liked it. Nobody thought it was funny. I watched it the first time I watched it. I'm pretty sure I urinated, but I pissed myself laughing at that movie from beginning to end, and I still do to this day. But another movie that does that to me is the 2000 satiric comedy drama musical Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which is loosely based on the Odyssey. And in this film, you have George Clooney, John Turturro, Tim Blake Nelson, John Goodman, Holly Hunter, who they worked with on Raising Arizona. as well. But a lot of these actors they work with repeatedly, they all get each other. But in this film, it follows three escaped convicts searching for hidden treasure while the sheriff relentlessly pursues them. It's a story of a modern satire which incorporates social features in the American South around that era, and it is, of course, loosely based on the Odyssey. Uh, the main character is named Ulysses, uh, which is the Roman name for Odysseus, and the title of the film is a reference to a 1941 movie entitled Sullivan's Travels, which the protagonist is a director who wants to make a film called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Oddly enough, and that was based on a fictional book about the Great Depression. But this movie features folk music and that I've never gotten into. I've never even listened to a folk song before this movie. I didn't know anything about bluegrass. I didn't know nothing about all that. And so watching this movie was kind of weird, because I'm like, this ain't my bag musically, but it became my bag. It was that good. Now, that's not to say that I listen to folk music. I think after I watched the movie, that's it. That was it for me. It worked for the movie, but nothing to make me say, man, I gotta go get some folk CDs and all this. Nah, that wasn't happening. But man, I love this movie. I rewatched it in preparation for this show, and bro, that was the best 2 hours of my life. I could not have enjoyed, because I didn't realize it has been so long since I watched the movie. I've seen it since the year 2000, but I haven't seen, like, it doesn't pop up on television that often. It doesn't pop up on streaming services that often. It's just one of those lost gems, I guess you could say. At least in my case, I watched this movie and it felt like the first time. I laughed so hard throughout this movie, and to put that in perspective for you all, I don't do that. I don't. It takes a special type of movie to make me laugh out loud. Now, I've seen a lot of funny movies. I laugh, but not like, it's more of an internal thing. Like, oh, that was funny. I'll give a little chuckle or something. But I'm talking bursting out annoying laugh if you were sitting next to me. I mean, like knee slapping laugh or falling out of your chair funny type moments. It's only a few films that have done that, two of which were Coen Brothers films. It was this one and The Big Lebowski. The Big Lebowski is probably funnier to me because that's more of my type of humor. But this movie was funny without intent. George Clooney in this film is the best I've ever seen George Clooney. I'm not a George Clooney guy. I'm not like clamoring for George Clooney in movies. Probably because he destroyed one of my favorite characters of all time, that being Batman. And in Batman and Robin, which I don't give him all the blame for, but my God, it was horrible. I've just never been a George Clooney guy. Now, I watch his movies. The Ocean's films were good. I watched all of them. That's about it for me. I just feel he's George Clooney in every movie. I never really sense that he changes it up. Now, every now and then he will, but the movie doesn't really snatch me like that, so I don't give him, the flowers he deserved for switching it up. But this movie, my God, you want to talk about switching it up. George Clooney, I don't think he's ever been that funny in his life. This is so funny. And he's a funny guy. If you've seen him in interviews and stuff like that, he's a charming, funny guy. And this was a different kind of funny to me because his character was so over the top, just silly, dumb. He was that type of character that uh or a person you may know. I'm more than certain you know a person like uh uh Ulysses. Everybody knows a Ulysses who thinks he's the smartest person in the room, but really is the dumbest person in the room. But you're captured by the charm and the elegant way that they speak, that for a split second you believe that, oh, they know what they're talking about. Oh, this guy is really intelligent. But when you really sit back and listen to what they're saying, oh, he's an idiot. you know, everybody knows that person. I know several people like that. Several think they're the smartest person in the room, but don't know, barely know how to tie their shoes. But Ulysses is that character. He is, because this is set in rural Mississippi, and I forgot what year it's set in, but during the Jim Crow era, well before that, but real dirty South era of Mississippi, and everybody talks with that Mississippi slang, which they all do great. And I know Mississippi accents. My mom, dad, uncles, and my whole family is Mississippi bred and born. So I know a Mississippi accent when I hear it. And these actors do it. Yes, they do add a little over the topness because every actor or whoever thinks that everybody talks like they have a mouthful of grass or whatever, mud in their mouth or something. They got to put that extra little slang through it. But they don't talk like that. I never did because I was born in Louisiana. So I had a different, out of all of my siblings, I think I'm the only one to be born in Louisiana. Everybody else, my brothers, my sisters, my mom, my dad, my uncles, and all of them were born in Mississippi, except for me. I'm the black sheep. So, but people say I got a slang, and I don't think I do. I do when I know certain words I try to pronounce. It's hard for it to come out, and I know that's the Mississippi in me. That's fighting against the city boy in me. It comes out real bad. If you listen to the show enough, y'all know what I'm talking about. If you listen to this show long enough, you probably know what I'm talking about here. But anyways, yeah, I love George Clooney. This is my favorite George Clooney out of all of his films. So funny, so charming. It's everything that George Clooney was built up to be. And it was in this stupid comedy, based off of one of the world's oldest literatures. The chemistry between George Clooney and John Turturro and Tim Blake Nelson was spot on perfect. I loved their chemistry. Out of the three, though, I was deeply impressed with Tim Blake Nelson in this film because up to that point, I didn't know who he was. I didn't see him in anything else up prior to this. And so when he popped up in this, I'm like, who's this guy? I've seen John Turturro in a million things. I know George Clooney, but who's this guy? And he held his own with all of them. He held his own. And we all know who Tim Blake Nelson is now, of course, 26 years later. But in 2000, I didn't know. And he was awesome. He was awesome. John Turturro is awesome in everything. John Goodman as this he was basically the Cyclops of the story because he had the eye patch. Big Dan was his name. But he was he was a Bible salesman, or at least he was masquerading as a Bible salesman here, and basically one of the most racist people ever in the Ku Klux Klan. Ku Klux Klan had a major part in this story, which is odd to say this is a movie that I adore. but they get their comeuppings, of course. But it is a good performance from John Goodman. Whenever he's in the Coen Brothers films, he knocks it out the park. My favorite part about The Big Lebowski, what makes it such a classic to me, what makes it such a beloved film to me, is John Goodman in that movie. He stole the movie. He was so good in The Big Lebowski. Oh my God. And in this film as well, him being this slick oil salesman and basically a con man, the way he conned our main characters in this movie, our protagonist, it was just brilliant. You know, to say he wasn't in the film long, I think what, two, maybe three scenes, and they weren't big scenes, but he made the most of the time that he was on camera. Holly Hunter is another joy to watch on this film. Her playing her playing the wife of George Clooney in this movie, and when he finally gets back to her, and they're talking about she's talking about her new fiance that's going to take care of her, and there are 15 girls they have together. I forgot how many girls it is, but uh, and she kept the way she just, and this is Coen Brothers signature, them writing this line or writing this comedy, whereas they kind of repeat themselves over and over, but it works within the telling of the story of the scene. Just repeatedly calling this man bona fide. He's bona fide. And when George Clooney talks to his daughters, and she's like, "Oh, well, you still gonna be my dad? Well, is such and such still gonna be my dad too?" And he's like, "No." Well, Mama says he's bona fide, and the other girls are like, "Yeah, he's bona fide." It's just this. It ran on so long, and like in other movies, that would be like, okay, you're wearing this out. Okay, it's too much, but not in this movie because of the timing and perfectly placed dialogue and performances by these actresses. It was perfect, man. It was absolutely perfect. Love that section of the film. Love the section of the fact that what saved them was going and hustling this blind radio guy and telling him that they're black performers at first, and he's like, "Oh well, we don't really deal with color folk and all this here." And he's like, "Oh no, we just said that." it's, so that's when we get the song uh from the Soggy Bottom Boys here, and it was a banger too, and that basically came back to save them at the end of the movie because the song had got so popular, and they end up getting pardoned, and it was, I'm telling you, one of the best Coen Brothers films out of all their films, in my humble opinion. Yes, the best is No Country for Old Men. That will never change. I'm not crazy. That movie was excellent, excellent. But you got to put this movie up there. You got to put Raising Arizona up there. I mean, uh, they have a filmography that any filmmaker wish, hope, and pray they could actually have at the end of the day. But this was perfectly cast, perfectly directed, perfectly written. I think visually is outstanding. Of course, the great Roger Deakins was the cinematographer on this film. I have zero complaints about this movie. There are no flaws that I can point out in this film. Is this something you pop on to teach your kids or youngins about the Odyssey, to give them a crash course in that literature? Absolutely not. This has that is not going to help them in the least bit. But if you want to sit them down and show them that this is the way movies were made. They don't make movies like this anymore. This is something of a classic. I wouldn't even call it a cult classic. This is an actual classic. Everything about this movie works. And after watching it 26 years after its release, it still holds up to this day. It doesn't feel dated in no shape, form, or fashion. Oh brother, where art thou? Gets a letter grade of an A plus. Yes, it is a perfect movie in my humble opinion. But that's just my opinion. Are you excited for the Odyssey? If it's not the Odyssey, are you just plain excited for a Christopher Nolan film? It's funny how we got to the point where it's not Tom Cruise starring that gets you excited, or Arnold Schwarzenegger film that gets you excited, or Keanu Reeves film that gets you excited anymore. It's the director. It's Spielberg made this, because even though Disclosure Day was a little disappointing at the box office, initially everybody was excited because it was Spielberg, not because Emily Blunt or Wyatt Russell or anybody was in it. No, it's because Spielberg made the movie, and so on and so forth. Who was the biggest star to come out of Obsession? Outside of the actress who played Nikki, I think they talk about Curry Barker more than they talk about her. They talk about the director more. They're talking about Kane, what's his last name, who made Backrooms. They talk about him more. They don't talk about Chua as of Edge 4. They talk about the director of that movie more. It's more of the director that people are excited. That's the star. And when you say Christopher Nolan film, that's like, okay, I'm going. Because honestly, think about it. Who cared about Oppenheimer? I mean, who cares? I'm talking about the person as a whole. Who wants to sit at a 3-hour biofilm about Oppenheimer? Nobody. I didn't. But you put Christopher Nolan name on it. Oh, I'm going to see it, which I did. So it's just funny how we have transitioned as an audience now. What brings us into the movie theaters, and I'm excited to see how he interprets this property. Is he still going to be that grounded guy and not really go super fantastical? I know it's going to be in a realistic way. You go by the trailers, it still have that realistic feel. It doesn't look magical or anything like that, but man, I'm excited. I'm just excited. I can't wait. And this is the part that scares me, because with this much excitement, will I be let down? It's very possible, but I'm willing to take that chance. But I want to know your thoughts going forward, people. Are you excited for the Odyssey? Do you remember reading the Odyssey in high school and everything like me? Or was it just me? I thought everybody read that in high school, but I did talk to one person who said, "No, we never did," and it blew my mind. And so let me know. I would love to hear from you. Come holla at us over at kbradionetwork.com. Subscribe to the website so you can be updated on episodes as they drop. Also on YouTube, subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video while you're there. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me as we prepared for the Odyssey and reviewed the Coen Brothers film from the year 2000. Oh, brother, where art thou? Everybody, I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.